Hey guys, lot to unpack today. It's a year since George Floyd's coming up to the year anniversary of George Floyd killing, and his death changed America and it made us realize things we didn't realize pre George Floyd. Even with the pandemic roaring, George Floyd, the incident of him dying became the most prominent thing that American culture and society dealt with in the summer of 2020, right? And I want to tell you what I've gotten from that as a Black American male who lives very comfortably in this country in a democratic state that shields me from the bullshit that the rest of the country goes through on a daily basis in terms of race, right? This is just about race, not about politics or anything else, right? What I've learned, basically being locked in my house all summer, all 2020 because of COVID, and getting everything from the news, right? And I'm gonna go into that and compare it to the perspective of when I actually went back out and met people that I would normally interact with, and what the difference was between sitting locked at home, watching TV and news and pundits and YouTube and seeing what people are telling us, versus going out and talking to my neighbors and talking to my coworkers again, right? What I learned from just media showing me images of everything going on last summer was America's racial problems post George Floyd is not white and black anymore, right? In terms of just race, right? It's not black is good or black is bad and white is bad. It's not that clear cut. There's no lines anymore, right? In 1960 civil rights, there were lines there, right? You have black people on one side fighting for civil rights, and majority of white people didn't want that, right? They wanted things to stay the way they were, for whatever reason back then, right? They wanted colored fountains and white only fountains, white only's this, and colored only that, right? They didn't want any merging of two sets of Americans based solely on skin color, right? I could be a doctor and my white coworker could be a doctor, but we could never work together, right? That was the whole pre-civil rights and what the civil rights fought for. So let's clarify that, right? It was black versus white, if you want to say, for lack of a better terminology, right? Post George Floyd, when I watched the BLM protests, right? And I watched a lot of the counter protests, which I had a lot to say about that. The BLM movement, and I saw when it started in Ferguson, after Mike Brown, I believe the death of Mike Brown, started in Ferguson, and then the gray kid in Baltimore he died in a police van in transit. And BLM was just a group of black people. I'm not talking about the founders or the originators of it, but the people that were out there marching that I saw on the news, right? When Ferguson happened, it was mainly a group of black local people, right? Marching for the movement, right? They were educated, college educated, politically motivated, but a lot of them the core of them were just neighborhood people, right? They are angry and outraged by what they saw on the local level, right? Shift forward a couple of years to George Floyd, BLM now was a global movement, right? And through my Instagram, I follow a lot of people. You had the black squares and the people showing images of them marching, right? White, black, Asian, all types of people, right? And that happened instantaneously. George Floyd died, May 20th, May 19th, that happened. By June 2nd, the world was marching and protesting for to end systemic racism and to protest for racial justice, right? The world, right? It wasn't just a group of local black people. What the beauty of it that came out of that is people in Australia saw the same thing happening there to them, to those people, Aboriginals, people of color in Australia. People in New Zealand saw that happening to them. People in Canada, right? In South America and Latin America countries, in Spain, in England, Liverpool, right? And France had more protests. They still have protests today, right? Even places as remote as like I don't know, like Antarctica and places like that had people like putting banners and flags up, right? And I looked at it for the first time and realized it's not white and black anymore, and it's not localized to neighborhoods in America. It's a global pandemic, if you want to say that. Racism is a global pandemic, right? And the thing that made a lot more white people, a lot more young, educated people join the movement, right? And counter-protests will tell you, oh, it's Antifa, it's propaganda, it's political. It was not political, it's not propaganda, it's not Antifa or whatever you guys want to label it. But these, I looked at people, I spoke to them. I have people that work for me, right? Young white people in Brooklyn that went to march. And I was like, what are you guys doing? You guys, stay home, be safe. Don't go on the Brooklyn Bridge. You guys, the police are like spraying people and tasing people and whatever, rubber bullets. I'm telling them to stay home. They're like, no, Olaf, you got to go on the march. But I'm like, these are like young white Jewish kids. I'm looking at them and I'm like, why would they march for George Floyd, for Black Lives Matter, when they could literally ignore it and live their entire lives, white, blonde, blue eyes, Jewish, comfortably, without any fear or harm regarding racial injustice or something like that. I looked at them, I'm like, why? Right? And I realized something in talking to them. It wasn't about me or George Floyd. It was about what they wanted for the future of this country. And those young people are the future of America, right? I'll be dead in 40, 50 years, right? But they'll be alive and they'll have children. And the world they want for their kids is not the world that some old white racist redneck thinks America should be, right? Or these Donald Trump politicians think America should be, right? America will always be changing because the people in it change, right? Not through immigration or whatever they call it. It's through the new generation coming up, right? And looking around their parents' house and the parents' neighborhoods and the parents' country, right? And be like, yo, we could do better than this. We could do better than that. And for my own kids, that's what I want, right? If my kids tell me, Daddy, I think we're going to do better than this, right? I'll be the happiest parent ever, right? If my kids grow up and look around and have the conscience, right? And that part of the brain that lets them think outside the box. Creatively, right? And see things that aren't, concrete and in front of them, but abstract, right? Things that are possible. And they can say, Daddy, we want to do better than this, right? We could build a better house or a better street or a better society. And when I look at those white kids marching BLM, those other people of color, everyone in the movement, that is what they're marching for, right? They're not marching against policing or the system that a lot of them are privileged in, right? They're marching because they want to change the system or improve the system, right? And a year after that happened, I'm proud to see that has evolved, right? And I'm also, when I go back out now, right? That's the stuff they showed me on TV, and I took that in, and that's how I digested it, by just looking at it in social media and TV. But when I went back out, I went to get my car, my oil changed a couple weeks ago. I was talking to other people in the dealership that I haven't seen in a while, and I realized they're just like me. We talked about the same things, and they want to move forward, right? I went to my kids had something at their school, talking to all the parents, right? And they kind of want to think the same way I'm thinking, right? So I know I'm not crazy for being at home, making these videos saying, get your vaccine, we got to move on from this. Donald Trump lost the election. I'm not crazy. Other people, educated, right? Economically diverse, whatever, rich, poor, whatever. They all kind of think the same, right? It's not even thinking good or anything like that. It's just thinking like adults, that you look at your kids, you look at your neighborhoods, you want better. You don't want the same old nonsense, right? You do want the policing in this country to change, right? Right? My wife did jury duty. I give you a good example of policing, right? And I spoke to my friend who's internal affairs, who in detective, right? My sergeant. And he said, yeah, Olaf, we were talking about LPRs, these things called license plate readers that are hidden all over your city or town. And he said, yeah, Olaf, those help us solve more crimes, right? Without us leaving the police station, risking our lives, right? We could look at those things, track that information, share that information instantly, and catch criminals without leaving our seats in a police precinct, right? We communicate with all the precincts, right? Because crime isn't sometimes localized, it's statewide, right? And he said we use those things all the time in the state of New York to catch criminals. It's very effective. It works perfectly, right? And it saves us from having to do legwork and knocking on the wrong door for a warrant, right? And shooting a Breonna Taylor or making mistakes, right? It also protects police officers, right? Because now they're using their brains. They're using technology, right? They're using technology that we all use daily. I have all this shit in my kitchen, right? The shit I have in my kitchen has more microchips and technology and wireless power than a computer in 1995, right? And this is my kitchen, right? It's not like some underground Dr. Doom's basement lair, right? Evil lair. It's a kitchen in 2021, right? Why can't a police precinct have as much technology as my kitchen, right? And he's like, yeah, I kind of agree with that. And it doesn't really cost money if you do it right. And he's like, yeah, we fight more crime, right? Before even sometimes it happened. He was telling me an example of drug dealers coming to rob a drug house and they didn't know where the drug house was, right? But they knew these guys were coming from Virginia and they put something out. If you see a bunch of cars with Virginia plates driving in a caravan, track them. LPR tracked them to the house, right? And cops were able to get there, in time to stop, one, a crime from happening, but to also arrest and find suspects that already had warrants, that they had no idea where they were, right? It was that easy, right? It was clean, quick, effective. Just like when you see those movies where everything's clean, quick, effective, in and out, no one dies, no bullets shot. That's how it worked. And that's what defunding the police means. And when I heard him say that, I was like, that's when I understood defunding the police should happen, right? Because when you look at these police precincts, they're old school John Wayne guns and bullets and bulletproof vests, right? To fight complicated crimes. So a year after George Floyd, I see the importance of the BLM, and I see the importance of change in policing in America for the better, right? For the future, right? When you see movies like Demolition Man and Judge Dredd, right? Right? You see the technology that's used to fight crimes in those movies, right? And I think we can head there, right? Not so much Judge Dredd. I don't want to live in a society like that, but society where you could fight crime and prevent crime from happening as well, and safely, right? One last thing before I go, I'm going to talk about the counter-protest to BLM and this whole Blue Lives Matter movement. That was a big surge last summer. It came out towards the end of last summer, right? And it kind of died down on January 6th. It pretty much extinguished itself on January 6th when we saw exactly what was important to the anti-BLM group of people and pro-Trump group of people. We saw what was important to them, right? It wasn't about police lives. It wasn't anything about that. It wasn't about making the country better for all Americans, right? It wasn't, I can't even say it was political, right? Because a lot of those counter-BLM movements were just angry chants, right? Against anti-immigrants, anti-this, anti-that, anti-Antifa, right? And the thing about counter-protesting, something that has nothing to do with you, and I see it all the time on Facebook where someone brings up an article, right? An article comes up about police shoots black kid in a kind of all black neighborhood, right? And a bunch of black people might go in there and say, "Oh, this is sad. Why does this keep happening?" Right? You have like old white guy that lives in the suburbs that never been to a black neighborhood in his life, probably, or in the last 10 years, right? Policing in his community is perfect. The police aren't shooting anyone, right, in the suburbs, right, where he lives. His life is comfortable. He has money. He has a nice house, cars, kids in college, whatever. And he comes on this group, this chat thing, to say, oh, you guys are wrong. Racism doesn't exist. And we're like, well, who are you? Like, does it concern? It doesn't concern you, right? And I see a lot of that happening. Mind your fucking business, right? I always say, if old white ladies are getting their purse snatched in a neighborhood I don't never been to, right, by old white guys, right, or snatching old white ladies' purses, I'm not coming in that conversation to say it does or doesn't happen, or old white guys' lives matter, right, or purse lives matter, right? It doesn't concern me. I'm gonna stay my distance, right? This country's big enough for me to mind my business and be happy and successful, right, without having to interject in someone else's issues, right, and imposing my own privilege on their issues, right? Right? BLM didn't really concern me because I live in suburbs where the police aren't shooting at me, where I got stopped by the cops last year. Didn't fear for my life. It went well, right? Went okay. But still, I would be out there. I am out there supporting BLM, right? Because it's not about me. It's about the future. It's about when I look at the kids. And that's what I learned from George Floyd, right? The future is very, very important to young people. More so than old, disgruntled people that feel, livelihoods and histories taken away from them, right? The people that feel and scared of stuff being taken away from them, history, guns, a way of life, is being taken away from us, and we have to protect it and keep it great, make it great again, right? Their voices are way less important and will be extinguished sooner than the young people coming up, whose future are way more important to what you guys want to hold on to from the past, right? 100 years from now, world will be very different. Our ideas, what I'm saying here will be nonsense to someone 100 years from now, right? This will make no fucking sense to someone 100 years from now. BLM would make no fucking sense to someone 100 years from now. Anti-BLM would make no fucking sense to someone 100 years from now, right? So think about where we live in America and where we want to be in the next year, right? There's this thing we used to do in college when you started college in terms of planning. And I don't believe no one plans anymore, right? They used to say, imagine yourself 5 years from now. Where do you want to be? I want to be living in a nice house, driving a nice car. Well, now every day until that deadline, do one thing that gets you to that goal, right? One thing that gets you to that goal. Whether it could be something as little as saving $1 in a piggy bank, or enrolling in some sort of educational program that's going to get you a better, higher paying job. Just do it, right? Focus and do it, right? Take care of the future, and remember the past, but don't live behind the past. Don't live behind history, right? Don't put history in front of you. History shouldn't be your goal, right? It should be something we're moving away from in the back, right? I don't want to be talking about George Floyd next year, right? His memory will live on. He's very important in American history now. His name will be in history books, right? Blue Lives Matter won't be in history books. The person holding the Blue Lives Matter flag won't be in history books. George Floyd's name will be in history books. Whether in this country, in other countries, people will remember what happened last summer, and that is the future, right? That is making the future. That is writing the future, right? The history that happened before George Floyd, that created that incident, probably won't be mentioned, but the solutions to fix the problems will be mentioned as a beacon, as a guide for if it happens again. This is how we fixed it. This is how, going forward, we should fix it and look at this. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good one.